So let's talk about the yips. Now, let me take a step back. You ever had a moment where you were drinking coffee and all of a sudden you spilt it? It was hot, didn't feel good. You have this big stain that you're going to wear all day. And you're probably like, oh man, I got a big presentation. It's stressful. I can't do this, whatever. Right? And you probably felt a little embarrassed. Like I remember when I was in college, one of my most embarrassing moments ever. I was in college and I had taken an exam. It was biology. Big, large classroom at LSU, big amphitheater. And I always tried to take my test fast. My idea was if I was good and I knew the material, I could get done fast. Trust your instincts, go with it. And I'm in there and I'm taking the test and I get done and I'm like, I want to be done fast, because the other way I looked at it is if you had an hour and a half class, you took a test in 30 minutes, you had an hour of free time. And I'm taking the test and I'm standing up, I'm looking at my Scantron and I'm stepping down, just making sure that all the bubbles are filled in. And I tripped on the desk in front of me. And I go falling on top of the poor people in front of me. Like I'm not small, right? And here I go falling down right in the middle of a quiet test. And I was so embarrassed. And in fact, everybody kind of laughed and probably helped somebody cheat because I created a distraction. But the truth of the matter was, I kind of worried the next time I went back in there, everyone's going to go, oh, that's the dude, that's the doofus that fell down the steps. Okay. And so embarrassment played. Well, if you think about sports, we compete on a regular basis. We do everything we can to compete at our best. And there are times that sometimes we make a fool of ourselves. But there's nothing more embarrassing than the yips. We can choke under pressure. We can struggle when it's at its biggest moments. But at the end of the day, when we choke and we make a fool of ourselves because it's something simple, God almighty, is it bad. And we first really started studying it or like thinking about it about 40 years ago. There was a second baseman for the Los Angeles Dodgers by the name of Steve Sax. Steve Sax, he wasn't the first, okay, but he was one of the most prominent. He was a second baseman for the Los Angeles Dodgers, and he had Hollywood looks, right? Hollywood looks. And he just had everything going on. And at that time, the Dodgers were winning, and all of a sudden, he started struggling to throw the ball from second base in his position to first base. Like, I'm not talking like struggling like first base was moving. I'm talking like bouncing balls, sailing them into the stands. And, you know, crowds and opponents would jeer and they'd, funny, right? The reality was his neurological system was hijacking itself. And that's what happens. Okay, so recently, as you know, many of you found me because of Fixin' Frankie. I was fortunate enough to bring in Frankie from Barstool and Foreplay because he texted me and said, dude, I can't chip at all. I can't chip. I'm blading shots, I'm chunking shots, and it's so embarrassing. And so I was like, look, I guarantee you I can fix you, because I've had a lot of success working with people who have blocks, they have yips, and they just can't get it done. And so it was a really cool experience because it's really not that hard. So Bash, as a catcher, did you ever have throwing yips?
I never had throwing yips, but
you scared of them? Were you scared of them?
Absolutely, because so the thing that I hope you're going to answer, and this is why I'm so interested in this, but from a yips standpoint, and just because I played the position at a major college level and the professional level, the issues that I've seen with the yips are the from a catching standpoint, throws back to the pitcher,
which you should be able to make throws. Yeah, you should be able to make
the easiest throws. But you asked me to throw a laser beam to second base, there's no problem.
Correct.
And there could be a lot of different components. So I'm really interested in hearing what you had to say on that, because from a novice who doesn't know anything about it, like, I cannot wrap my head around it.
Right. And what happens for you guys to know? I'm gonna go through some graphics here in a minute. It's gonna take you through it. But what happens is a player just all of a sudden forgets the easy things. Nobody ever gets the yips on the hard things. They only get the yips on the difficult things. Okay? Or excuse me, on the easy things. Like the throws from a catcher to first base, catcher to pitcher, second base to first base, chipping around the green, short putts. I've had a few with driver yips, blocks on a round off back handspring, tuck. People all of a sudden balk, and it's the same pathology. So, Bash, are we going to go to the graphics now, or is there a video?
Yeah.
Is there a video that we had? We're going to do that in a minute. Oh, jumping ahead here. Okay.
Pull up graphics.
Yep, pulling up graphics. Here we go. Graphics coming up. Let me tell you what happens. Okay, here they come. All right, here's what happens. Okay, so everybody I've ever worked with in the YIPS, they've gone along just fine for a period of time. But more than likely, they've had an underlying mechanical flaw that has never come up to the surface. They're jumping along. They're bouncing along. They're chipping. They got a funky grip. They play it weird. They make it work. Okay. A second baseman gets up and they kind of chunk it over to the first baseman and they're fine. But they've got a little mechanical flaw and they've been able to play with absolutely no issues until, boom, something happens. They get under an increased pressure. Something happens with stress and what I call the catastrophic event. There's a moment where all of a sudden they go to throw it and they, short arm it, the ball bounces, and their own teammate starts laughing at them. Ah, ha, ha, ha. So funny. I had a golf pro tell me, PGA teaching professional, really good player. He's like, Doc, I don't play golf anymore. And I said, what was the event? He's like, nah, there wasn't an event. I said, bull, what was the event? And he says, well, all right, there was an event. He said, I was coming down the stretch. I was playing in a pro member. I had a buddy of mine that I was playing with. We have a lot of fun playing together. He's the member. I'm the pro. We're coming along. And I go to hit a chip in front of the big amphitheater of all the players standing around, drinking beer, watching everybody come in. And they would jeer at you and yell at you. And it was fun, right? Until I flubbed a chip. He said, I was right in front of the green. It was an easy chip. I just flubbed it. Ball went that far. And all of a sudden, everybody starts yelling and screaming at me. Ah, ha, ha, ha. And they're like, you suck, you whatever. And he said, normally it wouldn't have bothered me. But that catastrophic event, all of a sudden, he said, within seconds, I felt the pressure. It's like, oh my God. He goes, I couldn't even feel my hands. My heart was pounding and my head was racing. I said, how did you hit the next chip? He said, I walked over to it. I just hit it real quick. I said, you hit a good one? He goes, hell no, I bladed it over the green. And I said, what, you had to hit another chip? He said, yeah, now I have to walk up there while everybody's yelling at me and laughing at me. I had to walk on the other side of the green and hit another chip. And all I wanted to do was to be done, to get it over with. And if you remember, I think we have a video that's going to come up in a little bit to show some of them. But there was a very famous scene of Ernie Els at the first hole at the Masters. On the very first hole of the tournament, he gets up there and he starts hitting putts. And you could just see him moving faster and faster and faster. And it's like the mind goes into panic. You get this increased arousal, increased mental energy. And all of a sudden, it's painful. Now, I want you to understand it like this. I treat this, I try to look at this way. You have an alarm system in your house. Okay? And in that alarm system, you're hanging out, middle of the night, and at 2 o'clock in the morning, your alarm goes off. Wah, 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 louder than hell, right? And all of a sudden, you get up, and the first thing you think is, holy crud, something's wrong. Something's the matter, right? Now, in that moment, what is your mind thinking? Is your mind thinking, man, maybe a bird hit the window. Well, a bird doesn't really fly at 2 o'clock in the morning. Maybe the moisture changed the seal of the window. No, in the middle of the night, all of a sudden you think, threat, 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 right? Somebody's breaking in. Now imagine if you had been in an environment where there had been break-ins and there had been people breaking in at the middle of the night. Now that alarm going off is telling you there is a problem. It ain't telling you that there's something else going on. 100%, you've got to be in fight or flight response, surge of adrenaline, Get ready to fight. We're going to go find the burglar. We're going to protect our house. Is that what the alarm told you? The alarm told you that there was an intruder coming to take and do bad things to you and your family, right? That's what the alarm is saying. Nope. What the alarm is actually saying is there's a disconnect between the sensors. The alarm is alerting you to a potential threat, not a real one. But the discomfort that we feel there is bad. And that's why people have like a panic attack. When we have panic attacks, we have this pain in our chest, heart races, we think we're having a heart attack. It's a false alarm that looks real. Well, now our mind starts going, uh-oh, if this happens again, I don't know if I can handle it. Well, in the YIPS, the driving factor is not only loss of control, not only fear of that happening, is people are going to think I'm an idiot. People are going to think I suck. And then I love the fact about the YIPS. Throwing. I know Alan Jager's on here. He's a master in the mental game in baseball. And I know he's heard this a zillion times too. Hey, as a thrower, make sure you accelerate through the throw. Looks like you're kind of guiding it. Like, snap that wrist. Make sure you get a good turn. Now the player gets over it, and their mind is going wild on mechanical thoughts. They're very internal, right? And the YIPS start developing because that embarrassment is there. Let's go to the next slide, Bash. And now we start fearing that they're going to happen again. They start building, the tension rises. And now there's a new challenge. And it's amazing. We used to say in baseball that the ball always finds fear at the end of a game. Got a shortstop that's a little concerned with throwing, fielding ground balls, all of a sudden it's a bad hop. Every single time, right? The ball doesn't find confidence, it finds fear. Well, if you've got chipping yips or putting yips, well, don't leave it 3.5 feet short. Guaranteed to leave it 4 feet short. 100%. Now you're going to have to face it. And what happens is that false alarm starts telling stories again. Embarrassment rises. You get unbelievable tension. Your mind is going a mile a minute. And you have this increased focus on your mechanics. In putting, one of the things I spent some time with Brad Faxon, one of the best putters to ever play on the PGA Tour. And I was working with a player at the YIPS. And he said, in putting, those of you who've had putting yips, I'm going to jump between a few things, is that people take the club back and everybody goes, it looks like you decelled on it. So they all of a sudden accelerate through the putt, which looks like a yip. Chipping, looks like you dumped it, you stopped. So now they go real fast. So their transition is boom, really quick. Throwing, you got to turn and throw and accelerate through it, and the ball goes right into the ground or sails at 100 miles an hour over the first baseman's head. Or the catcher, got to turn. Catchers stand up. They got all that gear on. They just usually throw it back. Now all of a sudden, teach them turn, step, throw. It's hard to do, okay? And what happens? You got the opposing team in the other dugout yelling at you and laughing at you. You got your friends. Well, guess what, y'all? I had the chipping yips, 100%. I used to avoid playing golf. I had some bad technique, but I'm a good athlete. And next, I'd taken all the lessons. I'd get up over the ball. I'd work it and everything. And I would flub the chip. And then I'd be like, screw it. And I'd hit the next one fine. But I could guarantee, because I had unbelievable focus on my mechanics and I had completely lost targeting. And you know what I did? I'd hurry up and hit before the next player showed up. The yips are just like panic attacks. Just like them. You get this sudden surge of what if rolling within you, telling you how bad you're going to be. And instead of focusing on what to do, like instead of focusing on, I want to land the ball there, I want to throw it to the chest of the first baseman, I want to shoot my free throw to the back of the rim, we're focused on the how, not the where. And it takes us over. I've had unbelievable success helping people deal with it. There's a really good story in ESPN magazine about Tyler Matzik, who was the pitcher for the Atlanta Braves who overcame the yips by the help of a former Navy SEAL, Jason Kuhn, out of Stonewall Solutions up in Nashville. And he talked about increased tension. He said everybody's trying to release tension, but he looked at it as somebody who'd had the yips throwing himself on how to use trigger. And it was the sudden, just the slow increase of tension versus the all or nothing. And I loved that. And I'm going to show you how to overcome those in just a minute. But what I want you to understand about the YIPS, fear of embarrassment, number one, sudden surge of arousal, focus on the wrong things, and you are powerless to them. In just a minute, we're going to come back and I'm going to show you how to break the YIPS.